A man has been fatally shot by police after attacking an immigrant jail in Washington state over the weekend. Police say 69-year-old Willem Van Spronsen was armed with a rifle around 4 a.m. on Saturday and was throwing incendiary devices at the Tacoma Northwest Detention Center. Officials say he caused a vehicle to catch fire and attempted to ignite a propane tank and set buildings on fire. When officers arrived to the scene, police say they called out to him and then opened fire. It's unclear if Van Spronsen, who was also carrying a satchel and flares, fired his weapon as well. A friend of the suspect says she believes he wanted to end his life. The shooting took place the same day Vice President Mike Pence visited migrant detention centers in Texas, and just hours after a peaceful rally in front of the Washington facility. Joining us now, member of the Intelligence and Armed Services Committees, Independent Senator Angus King of Maine. Senator, thank you so much for being on the show this morning. I know you're behind legislation that should try and help, especially the migrant children who are suffering in some of these facilities.
Well, Mika, this bill should actually be called, this is a bill that should never have even been necessary.
Right.
It basically calls for humane treatment of children at the border. One of your guests earlier today said we can argue about what the border policy should be, how many asylees and those kinds of things. But once people are here, particularly children, we have a fundamental obligation to treat them humanely. It drives me nuts that we have to pass legislation saying give kids toothbrushes. Don't separate them from their family. I mean, it's all of those kinds of things, setting minimum standards. It's a sign of the times, I guess, that we have to pass a bill like this.
Well, specifically, what does your bill do?
Well, it's a whole series of things. The first is there has to be some kind of official finding that a child is with a trafficker as opposed to their family before families can be separated. So the basic principle is families stay together, children stay with their parents. Secondly, it sets a whole level of minimum standards for things like size of the space, humanitarian treatment, the kinds of things I mentioned, diapers, toothbrushes, those kinds of things. It also restricts for-profit facilities being the ones that handle children. There's a series of others, but it's basically treat kids right. And like I say, it's the kind of thing you should never have to pass legislation for. We passed a major bill a couple of weeks ago with the funding, and then people in Maine said, well, how do you know they're going to use this in the proper way? And this bill is really the answer to that question.
Jonathan Lemire, Secretary Acosta resigned on Friday due to his handling of the Jeffrey Epstein matter. You called for his resignation, but you also voted to confirm him, despite there being topic of discussion at the hearings about Epstein and news reports about the matter as well, and Acosta's handling of the case. Why did you vote to confirm him?
Well, because at the time I thought that his qualities as the Secretary of Labor outweighed the questions, and they weren't. I mean, this is 2020 hindsight. We didn't have anything like the detailed reporting that we have now. And, you know, I'm always hesitant to say I'm going to make a decision when I don't have all the facts. We have a lot more of the facts today about that decision, particularly the fact that it was kept secret from the victims in violation of federal law. The judge just ruled on that this past February, not 2 years ago. And ironically, Mr. Acosta was a pretty decent Secretary of Labor. I found him responsive and thoughtful, but this incident, when we found out all the details, I just thought, how can he possibly lead this department, particularly because the department has jurisdiction over trafficking issues.
Senator, your state has a considerable number of recently arrived immigrants now living in Maine, in places like Portland and Auburn, Maine. And over the weekend, the President of the United States, I'm sure you're familiar with the tweet, basically said to people like those people I just mentioned, get the hell out of our country, go back where you belong. So I'm wondering, in your mind, what do you think that does to the dialogue, the everyday dialogue and feelings of people in Maine, people in America actually, about this issue?
Well, it inflames the worst of our instincts. You know, this is a dark cloud that goes through United States history, and heretofore we've always had presidents that have tried to tamp down racism and prejudice and bias and anti-immigrant bias. Now we've got a president that is throwing a match on a flame. That's really unfortunate. The first thought I had when I saw that was Robert N. Welsh in the Army McCarthy hearings. At long last, have you no decency, sir? I mean, it's just, it's sort of, you keep saying this is the end of the line, but it never is, particularly a guy whose mother was an immigrant, his grandparents were immigrant, his wife is an immigrant, his first wife was an immigrant, I think first or second, I'm not sure which one Ivanka was, but anyway, to say go back to your country, everybody in America is from somewhere else except the Native Americans. Come on, these people, you know, go back to your country. One of them born in Cincinnati, born in Detroit. It's just, you know, I guess I go back to Robert N. Welsh. Have you no decency, sir?
Senator King, I really appreciate your legislation, your proposed legislation, Stop Cruelty to Migrant Children Act. But it seems to me that the Trump administration is trying to leverage the crisis at the border in order to change laws that are on the books. How do we tackle the question of immigration in the United States, kind of disentangle it from the stuff that we're dealing with the Trump administration and grapple with the true issues in front of us?
Well, having been on the front lines of this particular discussion a year ago on immigration, I can tell you that one of the problems is the administration never quite tells you what they want, and when they do, it's always a list that's impossible. If they would sit down and negotiate in good faith, I think everybody agrees that we need to revise and update our immigration laws. In 2013, the Senate passed a comprehensive immigration bill with 67 votes, 2/3. Who would have ever thought it? And we could do something like that today, I think. But the administration always moves the goalpost. Mike Rounds and I had a bipartisan bill last year that dealt with Dreamers and the Wall. We were headed for over 60 votes, and the White House pulled the plug the night before. So it can be done, but it means that the White House has to actually negotiate in good faith, which so far they haven't been willing to do. Like I said, everybody agrees, A, we need to do something about borders. B, we need to talk about the whole comprehensive immigration. We need to talk about the 11 million people who are here, who are dreamers, all of those kinds of issues. But there has to be an honest give and take.
Senator, you're on the Intelligence Committee. There's been some reporting in recent days that the president is looking to oust the Director of Intelligence, Dan Coats. I wanted to get your reaction to that. And do you think that the president is being well served by his intelligence and military advisors?
The answer to your second question is yes. I think he's getting straight advice because I know these people. I just asked that question of General Milley, the nominee to be the head of the Joint Chiefs of Staff last week. He answered as I knew he would. He's going to give his best professional military advice. He's not going to be intimidated. I think something to be emphasized here is if you push people out for telling you what you don't want to hear, you're the one that ultimately is going to suffer from that decision. I know Dan Coats well. I served on the Intelligence Committee with him. He's a man of integrity. He retired from the Senate. He took this job as a public service, and he's rendered a public service with integrity and honor. And I hope he continues to do so. It would be a mistake for the president to let somebody go who has such a serious commitment to the public interest and a commitment to telling the truth, which is what the intelligence agencies are assigned to do.
All right, Senator Angus King, thank you very much. Good luck with the legislation. We appreciate your being on this morning.
Thank you.
And